Yes, guys, welcome back to another episode of Teams Like Brighton, and it's safe to say that this week has been a mellow one at that. Devastating news about Enock Mwepu. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy in football, to be honest with you, and someone who's just really finding his feet at the club and in the Premier League scene. All his dreams were coming true, and then one hell of a bombshell was given to him. Was he 24? 24 years old, and he been given a hereditary heart condition. He's been diagnosed. He wasn't given it. He's always had it. He was diagnosed with a hereditary heart condition after falling ill during international duty for Zambia, and was given the bad news recently. Richie, safe to say that no one saw this coming. No one expected this. We were told he was ill, and we hope to have him very soon. Safe to say everyone was shocked by this.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a week off, and I was just going through my emails, and then I think it was 9:52 a.m. Just breaking news came in from the club saying Enock Mwepu has been forced to retire. I was absolutely gutted. I mean, he's one of I've interviewed a few Brighton players, but he was one of my favourites. I mean, just in terms of like a sense of how likeable the guy was. You know, he was very unlucky since his move from Salzburg last August with injuries. I believe he actually only started 12 Premier League games last season, and he only made 27 appearances in all competitions. So after having sort of groin and I think hamstring and other sort of niggles during his first season, I asked him, you know, is it has it been hard, or, you know, is it sometimes frustrating? And he, classic sort of glass half full attitude, said, no, I actually see it as a blessing, because then that shows me that I have to work harder to condition my body to be in a better state. And you're just like, you know, I could do with a dose of that optimism, because, you know, I've had lots of injuries and I'm just like, ugh. But he was just like, yeah, this will make me better. So, and he was such a kind of a personable and affable guy, and you know, 24, and also because it was, injuries did sort of blight his first season or so. That's maybe it was a shame, because he was such a talented player. Like, honestly, on a couple of occasions, I think especially the away win at Arsenal, he was unbelievable. There's one, well, he scored a fantastic sort of half-volleyed strike at the Emirates. But then there's a fantastic bit of play where I think Emil Smith-Rowe's on the ball. He takes it off him. I think maybe megs him. And then there's a guy who slides in and he just dinks the ball over him so nonchalant. And you're just like, this guy's got proper box office when he's on. And yeah, just, you know, it was sad because, well, obviously it's very, very sad, but he flew to I think Mali for his Zambian internationals, and then his good friend and fellow countryman Patson Daka also, I think, missed a game or so, but he came back fine. So you're thinking, oh, maybe it's just an illness, and then it was quite sad because Mwepu went on social media, I think in late September, because he was getting a lot of stick from some Zambian fans, basically saying, you know, he should have played. And I think this was still in the early stages of the diagnosis. So, yeah, it's just the worst news, and you know, it really puts things into perspective. And the only kind of, you know, silver lining is that they have diagnosed it now, rather than when he was, you know, on the pitch, and it could have been maybe another Fabrice Muamba situation or worse. So, thank God that he's they've got to it now, and hopefully he can go into coaching or maybe go back to Zambia and do some coaching there. But it is it's, you know, you're 24 and you're cut out from doing something you love forever in terms of a competitive level. And obviously the footballer's career is very short, but I just hope it sounds like he's got really good people around him, and some of the comments from the club have been great in terms of like Tony Bloom, De Zerbi, really, really supportive. So many messages of support from the teammates. They really want to help him. So yeah, it's really, really terrible news, and I just wish him the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go back on what you said, like you said, like that performance away at Arsenal last season was iconic, and I think that was definitely the performance where a lot of Brighton fans finally got excited and could see the hype surrounding Enock Mwepu. And like you say, his progress was hampered with injuries. He was very unlucky on that side of things. But when he played very well. And the last time he was out in the Brighton shirt against Leicester City, he was fantastic as well. Got an assist as well, set up Moises Caicedo, and just really just managed to dictate the play as well as carry the ball forward, which is something that we have lacked pre Mwepu. And even during Mwepu's time when he was injured, we just lacks that little bit in the midfield to just carry the ball forward, win it forward, that box-to-box midfielder. And it's just such a shame for all involved. It does feel like we were going one step forward, and with this, it's two steps back. But it's really pleasing to see him wanting to stay in football. And he's going to stay in some capacity. I hope the club gives him something to do. I hope the club helps him out in that. If he was going to coaching, I hope the club pays for his badges. If he wants to go into scouting and all that kind of thing, that there's so many opportunities for him to get involved in football. Which I think if you talked about it about probably even 10, 20 years ago, it'll be a different story for him, which would make things worse. But he's, let's say, 24 years of age, not even at his peak of his career. It is a short-lived career as a professional footballer, and it's just shortens dramatically. It is so sad because I felt like he was going to be one of our key players this season, even under De Zerbi. And it's just, and not like De Zerbi saying, it's just he feels for the kid, he feels for the player. For his family as well. So it was such a class that Bloom, paid a big tribute to him. It was great to see De Zerbi making nice comments as well. But now I really hope the club give him that support, really give him the support and set the foundation. So I doubt they won't. I think they'll be fantastic with it all. They usually are. But yeah, it is quite sad, but I do love the fact that there are so many Albion fans out there who are buying Zambian flags ahead of the match at Brentford, and again for Tuesday as well at home to Nottingham Forest. And I hope Mwepu's a guest for the Albion on Tuesday night, because I think that he'll really appreciate it, and I think it will really help him out as well, because I mean we're so fond of the player and we rated him so highly, and I think he deserves that little kind of like that thank you moment.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that poor me for not mentioning, but obviously the one that really got everyone talking about him was that goal against Liverpool. I mean, it's funny. There was a bit of a debate, I think, at the time. Did he mean it? Was it a cross? Was it a shot? But there's later sort of learned this kind of word called Ninkamuna, I think. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, but it's basically just like I think it's Zambian for I see you. So and this is sort of feeds back into Mwepu being the computer, because he reads the game so well, and some of his assists were also fantastic. That one against, I think, Everton when he set up McAllister. An unbelievable one for against Brentford in the 2-0 win when he chipped over the top to, I think it was Trossard, and then he chipped over. And then also I think he set up Trossard as well in the Arsenal win. But yeah, just that vision. I think he saw Allison off his line, just got a little pass, I think maybe from March, and just swept it into that top corner. Obviously, and that was Brighton's goal of the season last year. So a fantastic talent. He's been compared to Yaya Toure in terms of his kind of, pace and power and gallivanting runs. And I just remember a fairly lengthy segment on Match of the Day when Ian Wright was just waxing lyrical about how good Mwepu was against Arsenal at the Emirates. It was an absolute joy to watch him play. And yes, as you said, good comments. And I think Brighton will definitely do a good tribute tonight against Brentford and maybe going forward. So yeah, best of luck to him.
Yes, absolutely, and it fits in quite well with tonight's match. Brentford's away, tough one, Richie. I'm not sure how to feel about this one. Brentford's are okay at the moment in the post Christian Eriksen season. Yes, up and down. There are ups and there are downs, but I think it's safe to say that you cannot underestimate this team at all. I think if we did, it'll be criminal, and it'll be incredibly ironic that we go ahead and say we should be beating teams like Brentford on this podcast. You got to admire what Thomas Frank has done and how he set up the team. They are joy to watch at times, and they do come out with a few tricks up their sleeve. But De Zerbi's saying that he's tried a few things in training, into his playing style, and we could be expecting to see that later on tonight, which would be exciting. So it'd be interesting to see how Frank deals with that. Will De Zerbi get the upper hand, or will it be Frank, or will they both just cancel each other out? Who knows? But it's going to be a tough one, I think, for the Albion. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, it was interesting. So yeah, Brentford have been very up and down this year. Obviously, they beat Man U 4-0. They thumped Leeds 5-2. But then last weekend, they were on the receiving end of a 5-1 thrashing at Newcastle. I think Thomas Frank described that result as a freak game. And he says there will be 100 years of Brentford history before that happens again in terms of conceding that many goals. So
big claim.
I wouldn't put it. I mean, if he's still alive, he might have some vampire tendencies in him. I don't know, but yeah. So they are. I think they're definitely a tougher nut to crack at home. I think they're pretty free scoring this season. I think maybe 16 or 17 goals from 16 goals from 9 games. I think they conceded 17, so they can be got at defensively. They are missing, I think, their captain and defender Pontus Jansson, and also their key sort of ball winner Christian Norgard in the middle of the pitch. So yeah, I think this will be a tight one. The game at this ground last season, Brentford Community Stadium, was a really, really close one. Brentford had chances to win it, and then obviously Trossard popped up in the 90th minute to score a lovely winner later on. So, but then yeah, the game at the Amex was much more one-sided to Brighton. But yeah, they definitely got the players to hurt. Right, even Ivan Toney on his day is a real handful. Scored a hat-trick against Leeds not that long ago. But they've also got good attacking players in Mwepu, and they've got, I think, Wissa pretty much every time he comes off the bench he scores. They've got and they're a clever team. I think they're not too dissimilar from Brighton. I think last season Thomas Frank said it was a fantastic story that 10 or so years ago these two teams were playing in League One, and now they're playing in the Premier League, and they've done it on pretty modest budgets. I believe sort of latest sort of financial findings found that in terms of the cost of squads assembled, Brighton were 19th and Brentford were 20th in terms of just having smaller budgets, and they're punching above their weight. Brighton obviously 7th at the moment, worth in the top 4. Brentford 11th. So they're definitely a team not to be underestimated. One thing that I've seen, Chris Sutton, who I think has not been particularly good when trying to replace Mark Lawrenson in his BBC Sport predictions, has actually predicted a 2-1 win to Brighton. So I don't know if that's a kiss of death or if we should just ignore it. But yeah, it's I think it will be a very, very close one. What about you?
I would ignore anything that Chris Sutton really says, to be honest. Even if it's a good thing or a bad thing, it's just he does come out with some cracking one-liners that would even make Garth Crooks cringe at times. I think.
Wow, that is a claim.
I didn't stutter when I say that. But look, it's again, like you say, like there are factors in it for Brentford that can make it a tough shift for them. Like you're saying, they haven't got Pontus Jansson, they haven't got Norgard in, and they're two real big focuses on their spine. So losing that in the midfield and in the back four, that's troublesome for them. And like you're saying, they had a freak defeat against Newcastle 5-1. I don't think anyone really predicted that to happen. And the game didn't even warrant it.
I don't think a lot of mistakes, wasn't it?
It was a lot of mistakes, but when Brentford had the ball, they were threatening. I think they were even more threatening, and they had the momentum at times in that match as well. So it's just a case of ruin missed chances for them in that match. I think Newcastle were just incredibly clinical. But then again, like you say, like the mistakes happens, and it was kind of like a gift from the gods. And when you're in the Premier League and you're on the receiving end of those mistakes, you're gonna have to take them. Otherwise, this league will find you out and it will punish you. And Newcastle took them. I think with Brighton, we haven't really seen what De Zerbi has to offer for Brighton in terms of his playing style, his philosophy, and what we can see. We've seen very simple tactics at the moment, and there are many reasons for that. You had the international break when he signed for us, and then we had a big game against Liverpool, and then we had another big game against Spurs. So there was all like trying to make sure that the momentum is with us as much as we possibly can, and just defending and then just hit them on the counter and just trying to play our style that we're used to see, and just try and go into a nice smooth transition. And I think right now we are seeing De Zerbi really putting forward his philosophy in there from the comments he's made in the press conference. And if the players receive it well, and clearly they do, they really want to play in this style of play. The club have identified that since dismissing Chris Hughton. Then as after Hughton left, Brighton identified like we want to play in a nice attacking playing style. De Zerbi's definitely one of those managers that do it. But again, the tactics, the little niches in those tactics is different. So it'll be interesting to see. I would love to be a fly on the wall in that training ground and see exactly what he does. But at the same time, it'd be interesting to see how he does at the community stadium over in Brentford. But I think it'd be criminal for me not to mention this, that I am really looking forward to any crowd shots of our chairman Tony Bloom there. He seems to have a tradition there. Doesn't really like the director's box at Brentford. Could be something to do about Brentford's owner, that there used to be former colleagues and now yes, Mr. Benham branched off and did his own sort of betting syndicates as well, much to Tony Bloom's frustrations. And since that's happened, he has never gone into the away director's box at Brentford, and I absolutely love it. And I think the fans love it even more. He's one of the people.
One of us.
And that's just something that I just love. I love the pettiness. I love it. Okay, I love it. That there are so many directors, I'm sure, who are frustrated and annoyed by other directors in the footballing world. But I don't think we can see anything as petty as what's going on between Bloom and Benham. I don't even think Benham goes to the Amex. I might be wrong in that, but I just love the fact that Tony Bloom's there with the fans in the away end. I've seen him a couple of times in Griffin Park, and he's just a great guy to chat to. And then you see him on the trains, just sharing a couple of drinks with everyone, just talking about football. He's not in the first class coaches. He's not he's not on the private helicopter from wherever in London to Shoreham Airport. He's just one of the people, and I love it. He's a Brighton fan through and through, and I just love the fact that he has those little moments.
Yeah, just on that quickly, it's funny. So whenever I do like an article on Tony Bloom, I go on Getty Images, and because we can use the pictures there. But the kind of photos are, he doesn't, a few and far between in terms of recent stuff. And then what was great was that, as you say, so last season he was in the away end for the 1-0 win at Brentford, and they basically uploaded about 5 or 6 photos of him like kind of clapping or like punching the air or just immersed with the fans. You're like, oh great, I've got some new photos. But it's pretty rare. I mean, in terms of like you say, there's every now and again you'll see photos of him popped up on social media with some fans and drinking on the train or whatever. And I think that's why I can't quite remember it exactly, but there's been a number of sort of surveys in terms of like fans liking him, and he's always in the top 3 in the Premier League. I think the Leicester, not so much now, but Leicester were like number 1, I think. But Brighton were, Bloom was 2nd or 3rd. So real credit to him. It's such a rare thing, and if you contrast that, literally polar opposites with like the Glazers or like kind of all the owners from the big 6 who wanted to go off into the Super League. It's such a contrast, and it's as man of the people.
Yes, absolutely. Just on the side note as well about the top 6 owners, I was listening to a podcast featuring former Arsenal director David Dein, and it was really interesting to hear his comments about how he was a businessman, but he's a big Arsenal fan. And I don't think we're ever going to see that really on the top stage unless someone's very lucky enough to amass a fortune to be able to fund a top 6 side and have aspirations to win Champions League football, because that's what a top six club aspires to. And I just think that what the likes of David Dein has done, and what some of the other previous owners have done in the early era of the Premier League, has done a footlining for this, but it's also made football attractive as a business. It's an entertainment business, and investors want to see returns on that, which is totally understandable. It's something that if you're football purists, you absolutely loathe. It's not something that you really want to get behind, but again, it's just in that kind of sense of how incredibly lucky we have a manager. Not a manager, sorry, a chairman in Tony Bloom, and who owns the club. His family have been with the club for generations after generations after generations. His uncle was involved in bringing Brian Clough in to the club. There's so much about the Bloom family and the Albion that I just love, that really kind of like puts us towards sort of like something that can please the football purists. And I know that there are plenty of purists at this club who don't like the way some things are going in the club, and we will be mentioning something that is affecting a lot of fans tonight. But again, it's just we've got a chairman here who is a fan first, and you can clearly see that he's a fan first because of what he does and what he and how he sets himself. Like he goes to pubs and does Q&As for supporters trusts and supporters associations across the country that I love. I'll never forget the one about over in Bristol, just before Bristol City away, when Stevie Sidwell scored an absolute beauty and made that tribute to Knockout. And this kid just goes, whenever you hear about people singing Tony Bloom's Army, do you ever think, yeah, I'm the man? And I just love it. And he's there laughing because he's there, I think, secretly probably thinking, yeah, I absolutely do. But he's like saying that, and then he acts like a chairman going, it's a privilege to be in the position I'm in. Of course, it's a privilege to be in the position you're in, Tony, Mr. Chairman. You own the club that you love and supported all your life. On the side note as well, I absolutely love the fact that he won a poker tournament as well. 3 years out, and he wins the first one.
The Lizard still got it.
The Lizard still has it. He still has it. But I'm going to move this on slightly because I don't want to end this on a bad note, but it's just there's something that I've read from an article that you've done on Paul Barber that really annoys me, and it goes back to this whole thing that I've been saying about Barber makes unpopular choices because I think he kind of has to. Tony Bloom's the fan, but he's hired Paul Barber because he needs to bring in that business side of things in, and he doesn't want, and you can't have like that fan mentality affecting the business side of the club. So I totally understand why Bloom has hired Barber. But this away ticket thing is just ridiculous. And for those of you who are completely unaware for what's happening, let me explain. Firstly, have you been living under a rock? Secondly, for those who don't know, the Albion have introduced a new sub scheme, shall we say, for away ticket holders, in which that every single ticket will have a name on it, and that name will be from the account that has been bought off that. So for me, it'll have my name on it. For my mate Andy, it will have his name on it. And the purpose of this is because of, and I can't stress this enough, because these are the words of Paul Barber, a small minority are buying tickets, hoarding loyalty points, and giving it to other people. It's really, really frustrating that there are several questions that come into my head. One, if you know it's a small minority, why aren't you penalizing them? If you clearly know it's a small minority, then you clearly know who these people are. Why aren't you investigating them and bringing in evidence to see that? Secondly, what happens to those who are ill on the day or in the build up to the match or can't go for whatever extenuating circumstance? Would you prefer an empty seat? Would you prefer a few fans to have the unfortunate situation where they can't be there, and then you have a cluster of empty seats there when it could easily be filled out through friends or family who are available, who aren't affected by whatever's happened to the ticket holder personally? It's just there's just this annoying and frustrating situation that we're in, where once again the massive majority who are going by the rules, who are doing it in line with whatever the law says, and yet we're personally getting punished, we're personally getting vilified. This is kind of the thing that really frustrates me in football, where you're almost treated as hostiles. You're treated like almost like a bit like animals and people who go against laws and rules all the time. But if it's the small minority, just penalize them, because it's ridiculous the fact that you have to get staff members to get a Sharpie permanent marker and write the person's name. And we have seen that quite clearly. They do so much that they keep on making mistakes in people's names, which is a good start. I remember this being introduced a few years back for the Brighton game, and a mate of mine couldn't make it, but it has your name on it, and he gave it to his dad. He gave it to his dad, and he got asked there, and the stewards were there looking at him like saying like, "Oh, can I see some ID?" Showed him his ID. He goes, "Right." Unfortunately, the stewards use common sense, and it's like, "Oh, I can see that. This is a relative of yours." And the guy just explained, "Yeah, it's my son's. Unfortunately he's really ill." And they're like, "Yeah, that's fine. Let's go through it." I guarantee you that won't happen now. Guarantee it, because of this 3-line whip rule from Barber. I kind of get it where he's coming from, because there is nothing worse than someone who's been in a very good position for so many years and has accumulated a large amount of loyalty points. You don't want to lose that position on away games. And with the prospect of European football potentially around the corner, you want to make sure that you're in the best possible position. Of course, I do. I've amassed a lot of loyalty points, but I don't just buy tickets and then send them off to other people. That's unfair, because then those people who have enjoyed 4 or 5, maybe even 6 away games from someone else's account, they don't have the loyalty points, despite the fact that they've committed to the 100 plus pounds that they have to pay in a world of cost of living crisis. and they don't get to reap the rewards of it later on. Sure, they just want to be there for the moment, but when you think I could have got easily up to 120 loyalty points there, and that could have been the difference for me being able to go to, a massive deciding match, or Palace away, or a big 6-pointer in the race for Europe, and then it gets carried over to next season. If we qualify, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I could see us having a reform in the away ticket system from this situation. And I'm really, it's really upsetting to have to talk about this, because it's such a drastic, a drastic rule, a drastic policy to implement, when so many other clubs do not do it this way. I know, and on the side note as well, I don't know if you've heard about this, but Man United are now asking fans to prove that these fans are actually going to the games, which I find comical as well. But I hope we don't go down that route where I have to go and have an email to say, can you prove that you were actually at the match? I don't like that kind of like accusational tone. And I hope this is something that's short-lived. I hope it's just a case of we found that small minority, and we've got proof of it. We're going to stop it. But yeah, it just makes things a little bit more frustrating. Yeah, most of us, if it's a case of, well, if you don't break the rules, don't do it. Like, yeah, fair enough. I won't break the rules. I never do. But when you have those situations where I may not be able to go because of a death in the family, or because I've fallen ill, of course I'm going to give it to a mate of mine who might be able to do it last minute. But that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, it's lots of interesting points. I just for people who maybe, like you said, have been living under a rock, or are maybe not au fait with what's happening. So just in terms of a bit more background, I'm just going to read a couple of Brighton CEO Paul Barber's comments on this, and he said, our new away ticketing policy will come into operation at Brentford, which is tonight. It's really disappointing that our ticketing and security staff have felt the need to introduce a new policy at all. However, facing systematic and repeated abuse of the loyalty point system, an escalation in unacceptable behaviour, and with previous warnings ignored, we had no other option. And it's going back to your point about the minority. Unfortunately, as in most walks of life, the selfish actions of a small but not insignificant minority of people will now on occasions inconvenience a small number of fans at each of our future away games. We apologise to those fans, which are by the vast majority who have respected the club's policies, ticketing terms and conditions in the law, but the entirely understandable frustration that the inconvenience the changes may cause should not be directed at the club staff. So there's definitely some fair points in there. I think my thing that I also don't maybe like, and I don't know the situation or how they could sort of get to the bottom of finding those perpetrators and getting to the bottom of this. But I think my maybe gripe would be, or maybe quite a strong word, but I think the fact that when they announced this on the 26th of September, the second line says tickets that supporters purchase for away matches are for the sole use of the assigned owner. Only assigned 1901 members owners may without charge transfer away tickets, although they remain responsible for their guests. So I think what I don't like about that is that it's essentially, the more well-off in businesses and whatnot, there's one rule for them and then a different rule for the fans who, like you say, are dealing with a cost of living crisis, and everyone is. But I feel that it's maybe one rule for one and one for another, and I don't know if. Correct if I'm wrong. I think there may be 91 members are on like a longer contract or type thing, so they have these benefits for maybe a number of years. So perhaps they couldn't change the terms and conditions during something, whereas they could maybe for just fans. And I think that's my biggest gripe, that some fans and others do.
It doesn't look great when you look at the fact that 1901 members have that benefit, when what is literally happening for regular ticket holders or season ticket holders with a lot of loyalty points. 1901 or what most of us have been, well, the small minority, but not insignificant amount, as what Barber said, are accused of doing. 1901 are allowed to do it, and they're allowed to sign the owner to it. So why can't we? I mean, I understand that there must be some sort of benefits or list of benefits for 1901 members to have, and I don't think there are many people who have boxes or hospitality packages elsewhere that have a decent amount of, shall we say, away ticket benefits, like us. But again, it's kind of like you say. When I was reading it out, it felt like one rule for them, another rule for us, and that is a dangerous territory to go in. And once again, like, you know, when I'm in this position when I'm incredibly frustrated with Barber, but fair play to him to actually be approachable once again. I can't fault him. This is the annoying thing I have. Like, as a fan who's like an emotional and quite a passionate guy, I would always look to lie blame with someone, and the first person I do is Barber. And then he comes out and he explains everything. He responds to people's emails with, it has to be said, like, comprehensive replies as well. And it really annoys me in that moment, because I'm like, oh god damn it, you explain it well and you make sense, but no, I don't like it still. I can't have it. So again, it's the emotional side that gets in the way for me. I just feel like it's again just losing that kind of that kind of feeling that you get at football matches. I can't tell you the amount of times where I've been able to go to matches because people have dropped out last minute, and I've immediately jumped on that ticket at the first time I've been offered it. I've been to some Premier League games. I've been to Upton Park a couple of times. A friend of mine was a West Ham season ticket holder, and the other family who went dropped out last minute for various reasons, and I took their ticket. There's been times when I've been to Brighton away games at the Withdean, at the Amex, where people have dropped out. Of course, I've jumped on that, and even been privileged enough to be able to go and sit in boxes at Manchester City last minute. Of course, I've jumped.
Get you
exactly, like, but I think that's the beauty of it. Like, you're able to get tickets for that like that quickly, and I think it's kind of a case of it shouldn't be with the assigned owner. In the way, there should be a bit of a clause where there are extenuating circumstances, because I think the biggest crime of all is an empty seat at a ground. It always makes me sad whenever I watch football and there are empty seats, because there are fans upon fans upon fans who would do anything to get a ticket and to get themselves a seat to watch their team play. Doesn't matter if you're Real Betis or Brighton Hove Albion or Fleetwood Town, you always will have fans that want to go and watch football, or you'll have football fans who will want to go and watch football. So, and one of the ways to get tickets is, through mates, through friends, or through someone, or through mates of a mate who's dropped out. So I do hope that those who are small minority do get penalised for this. And there have been a couple of high profile instances in the past who have exploited the system, and dare I say, yeah, well, no, they did. They touted, they touted big time. So I hope that they move swiftly for this, and hopefully this measure is a temporary one. But it's such an unpopular one, and I think it just caused divisions in the club. And whoever gets caught, you deserve what you get. But it's just annoying that the significant majority, are punished because of the crimes allegedly committed by the small minority. But that's it. That's all I've got to say on it.
Yeah, just on well put. Agree with a lot of that. So just in terms of finishing up, I'm just going to talk about a few main takeaways from Roberto De Zerbi's press conference yesterday on Thursday. So I think one that was just really well put. The more I listen to him, the more kind of clarity I think he is. So I think a Sky Sports reporter asked him about, Enock Mwepu still has, nearly 3 years left on his contract. There's the money side to consider. There's the fact that, it's a very, very difficult time for him and all that. With, having been forced to retire because of the heart condition. And he just gave a fairly concise but impactful response. And he says, I don't want to speak about money with Enock. I only want to speak about him as a human being. I'm very sorry for him, for his family. I wrote a message to him a few days ago that I'm always ready to listen to what he wants to do, and I'm ready to help him, just in terms of, what comes next. And I just thought that was really, really well put. The second interesting takeaway was around the time that De Zerbi was appointed, a certain pundit who has received a great deal of criticism from Brighton fans and many others, and actually I think without being named was called out by Ian Wright. Graham Souness basically said that it was a risk bringing in De Zerbi because he doesn't know the Premier League. I think, correct if I'm wrong, I don't think an English manager has won the Premier League. A number of Italians have, including Ancelotti and Conte. Ranieri, of course.
Mancini.
That was just stupid. So he was finally asked about this. And again, just cuts a kind of suave, sophisticated, just shrugs it off. When asked about the reaction to Souness's comments, he said, nothing. I don't suffer the criticism. For me, it's not a problem. The people can speak and give their opinion. I have to accept. For me, it's not a problem. I am 43 years old, not 20. I know very well that I should focus on my work. So just done with it.
Love it. And just on the side note as well, Souness was criticising De Zerbi for going at so many clubs for X amount of time, but he also went to about 8 clubs in about 7 years. And when he says about he doesn't know the Premier League, on the side note, I would love to know his extensive knowledge of Turkish football just before he joined Galatasaray. Not to say that in a nice way, but he was successful at Galatasaray, so therefore he clearly got involved in the moment and was quite successful in it. Granted, the fact that he nearly caused a riot in Istanbul for planting a flag in Fenerbahce Stadium, but we'll move on from that. But again, touch of class from De Zerbi once again. Touch of class. So I'm liking the way this guy thinks and the way he does things. And we always we hear a lot about what happened with him at Shakhtar Donetsk. His time there was cut short, but he always wanted to make sure that his players and his staff were safe before he even left the country, which for me is amazing, especially when it was in Donetsk of all places, because that was that is still one of the rife areas in the war in Ukraine. During that sad event, he was still, humble and selfless in that time. So I think I think that kind of shows the character of the man as well. Yeah.
And final of the 3 kind of main takeaways. De Zerbi was asked a couple of questions about Lewis Dunk, and he said, how important he is and how he's underestimated. And the final question he was asked is, can you help him get back into the England squad? Obviously, Dunk is coming up to his 31st birthday. He's just got the 1 cap under Southgate, which was a few years ago now. Obviously, it's a sore point amongst Brighton fans. And I think, there's a lot of credence to this view that, he definitely should have at least added a few more to that total. And he's probably arguably ahead of, he's a better player than some defenders who have got caps ahead of him. But yes, so he says, can you help get him back into the England squad? And he said, I would like to help him play for the national team. I don't like to talk about other people's teams, and I don't like to talk much for other managers. Sorry, I don't like other managers to talk too much about my players. But if you ask me if he's ready or he's good enough for the national team, I would say yes, for sure. So hopefully De Zerbi can maybe convince
De Zerbi isn't the one that needs helping in that matter. It's Southgate. Southgate needs help. Southgate needs help. Okay, you cannot ignore Lewis Dunk, one of the most informed defenders consistently for years, and you're telling me that you're bringing in Mark Guy in. Yeah, I know it's Palace, but I mean, he had a handful of good performances, and then also he gets in. Dunk at one point was one of the best performing defenders going, and he understands the style of play that Southgate wants to bring in. He understands how to work with a back three, a back five, probably better than most defenders in that league. Yet we're in this position where we'll go for an out of form and out of favour Harry Maguire, who still to this day is consistently played and is consistently he's mediocre at best.
Despite not being in Man U's team at the moment.
He did start last night, but then again, that's last night in
Europa League.
Yeah. Yes, Umanoia, of which he almost gifted them a goal. But again, like I look at the defending options, and I think there are so many good defenders there that are ignored. Lewis Dunk included. Connor Cody's ignored. Adam Webster, I think, is a bit at times he's had a couple of wobbly moments that I think on the international level you can't do, but he would be perfect as a deputy to Carl Walker, who's playing right centre back. I think there have just been times where the selection has been questioned a lot. Tyrone Mings was heavily in favour over Dunk for so many years, and for so many years questions started popping up. Why? Because he wasn't playing well for Villa, still not playing well for Villa. Yeah, he has been dropped now, but Dunk's getting ignored. And even Ben White's being ignored, the former Albion player who's been fantastic for Arsenal, and he's just not in the Southgate's pecking order for whatever reason. And I don't think we're going to see a drastic change either during the World Cup, which is a shame, because I think if he actually went in favour of people who are slightly better informed, for those who are usually in the squad and aren't in great form, we could be in for a good World Cup, but I don't see that happening. But
there you go. But let's wrap this all up. Tomo, what is your prediction for Brentford versus Brighton, please?
I'm going to go for a 2-0 win.
Ooh, like it. Hopefully the first win of the De Zerbi era. As I'm such a pessimist in life generally, I think Brighton will struggle. I think it'll be a 1-1 draw. I think Brentford will be bang up for it under the lights Friday night. They definitely won't. They'll want a response after that 5-1 drubbing at Newcastle. And I think their pressing game could maybe cause a bit of problems. They'll definitely try to win the ball high up the pitch against Brighton, and Brighton's passing game will need to be much more fluid than it was the last time they were in London, which I think was 2-1 defeat to Fulham, where they were really not at the races for much of that game. So I think it'll be a 1-1 draw, but hopefully the first win for De Zerbi.
Nice one. We'll leave it there, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Richie, always a pleasure. Enjoy the match tonight.
Cheers.
And I'll be enjoying it in the comforts of my living room. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much. And we'll be back ahead of the Nottingham Forest match on Tuesday as well.